Good morning. This is a wonderful opportunity for Sonoma State University to have a person of the caliber of Dr. Jaime Washington come to our campus and share with us his ideas and philosophies, but also to his passions about equity, diversity, and inclusivity is really an opportunity for us and our growth as we continue our own personal trajectory at SSU. I've known Dr. Washington for a number of years, and when I first arrived in April on the 2nd, one of the things that I promised all of you is that in 2 years we would be one of the most promising places to work in the nation in student affairs. That wasn't because we need to hang and our accolades on our and wear them as badges. It's because whatever services that we acquire and the professionalism that we pick up on the way is for our students. And any time that we can develop that kind of capacity, it's important. One of the things that we most recently created in our division is to make sure in support of the strategic planning process for the university is we actually now have an inclusive equity and diversity statement of how we then will treat our students and our community, because after all, we have student in our title. And that's how we need to create it. My mom says, that if you want to create that world around you, you must start with you. And so we will start with us today. Having Dr. Jaime Washington of the Washington Consulting Group. Jaime has a host of different titles. You also know too he's Reverend, so he brings that piece to the table. But Jaime is a passionate presenter, a scholar. The Economist magazine said he is one of the 10 most proficient and prolific educators in the area of diversity in the world. And to be able to have him on our campus is really, certainly is an honor. Jaime and I share another space too. Probably for the last 6 years, I've worked very closely with Jaime as as well as Jaime. We are individuals that put together what's called the African American Male Summit for the National Association for Student Personnel Administrators. So it's our international organization, which, by the way, Jaime's also the president of ACPA, which is our sister organization for student affairs. But we've been involved in the Male Summit for many years together as those individuals that have been putting this together as faculty members and coordinators. And I will tell you, what an uplifting experience when Dr. Washington opens the conference. And imagine, you've got around 800 African American males in this room that are higher education administrators. Wow. I can tell you that right now we have 29 African Americans on our campus that are actively involved in our BFSA. We just started a brand new Black Faculty Staff Association. So imagine having 800 people in a room that share a commonality of trust, honor, and being able to look at those things that we need to do to help to move the needle. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I did need to tell you that having my friend and colleague here is simply a joy. And I will share one thing that we talked about in our executive meeting. For those that are not part of our group here, I know the majority of us are student affairs, but our executive team are those individuals that report directly to the vice president, and they are the senior administrators within the Division of Student Affairs. And a couple of statements that were made, but the one that I think really is profound is, when you hear Dr. Washington, he will touch your soul. And without giving you all of his accolades, because you can get his degrees, but I will tell you that Dr. Washington has his PhD in student personnel from the University of Maryland. He does have his master, he has double masters. He has a master's degree from Indiana University in Bloomington. And I had forgot that he had gone to Slippery Rock because many years ago when I was an athlete, and Slippery Rock is known as a very athletic institution, and it has quite a few majors in recreation and sports. And I ran track at Slippery Rock several times. But the most important thing that Jaime brings to us is Jaime is a change maker. He's making a difference of diversity in the world. He helps us to see the intersectionalities that oftentimes that we can't find space and to talk about. He helps us in a way that for us, it's very difficult to have those conversations, and he allows us to have those conversations. So at this time, I'd like to bring up my friend, my colleague, and my heart, Dr. Jaime Washington.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning. So it is indeed a pleasure to be back at Sonoma. So I've been here before. Was anyone here and remembers me being here before in the room? Okay, all right. So some folks are in the room who've been around a while. So that means it's been a while since I was back. It was probably back in early 2000s or 90s when I was here last. And it is indeed a pleasure to be back. I want to say thank you to Dr. Sawyer and to Sue and to Rachel for your work and making my visit here possible. What I get to do as I move about the world today is to create space for us to engage what we say we value. And so what I'd like to start with is that this engagement today, this conversation today, is not a valueless proposition. It starts with what we value. And the title of this session is Building Our Capacity for a More Inclusive Learning Environment, Our Work for the Next Round. And so as I enter the space today, I don't enter it believing or thinking that this is your first time in this conversation. So when I am with my colleagues, particularly those of us in higher ed in general, but certainly those of us in student affairs and student services, that it has been and it has been our work to care about all of our students, right? And so I'm very seldom in a space with student affairs professionals who would say they don't care about students and their experiences. So that is without question. So there is, for me, an assumption that there is a valuing and a caring about all of our students and the experiences that they have. For many of us, we have spent our careers or we have come into this field because of our own experiences, because it is the space where we found our own voices, and because we want to create space because of what higher education gets to do in terms of creating a more inclusive world and the role that higher ed gets to play in that. My title about us building our capacity, our work for the next round, is an honoring of the labor that has gone before us. So even as we come into this room, I know that this work didn't start with us, and it won't end with us. So it is so important that we recognize those shoulders that we stand on. My dad in the field is Chuck Rhodes. Yes. And yes, it makes sense, exactly, right? So Chuck Rhodes was one of the first black gay professional men that I met when I entered this field back in the early 80s. And he modeled what it was like to walk in integrity. And so Chuck is who brought me here when I came many years ago. And we still honor each other in our connections now as he has gone on to do his work in divinity and is continuing to do the work. So I start by honoring that legacy because I don't take that for granted, right? And as we move into this space, I know that many of you know that this isn't your first time in this conversation. I know that you enter the space saying, okay, so where are we now? And what does this mean now? And how is this? And where are we going? So I ask folks, whenever I start my sessions, how many of you remember technology from the 80s and the 90s? Anybody remember technology from the 80s and 90s? Remember dial-up, right? Remember you got mail, right? Remember all of those things. And remember when a mobile phone was actually for the car, right? That's what it was actually for. Now, I know that some folks are in the rooms like, what? Well, no, I actually don't remember that. And it's okay, but there was a time when those things were true. If we today operated in the same, using the same technology from the 80s and the 90s in 2018, how many of you know we'd be missing some things? Our computers wouldn't even have, the capacity to kind of do the work that we need to do in the world today. Why I say that is because my experience has been that lots of campuses with the best intentions are doing diversity, equity, and inclusion with 1980s technology. And it is time for an upgrade, right? How many of you have ever had to upgrade your devices? I just did this morning, right? Now, we know that with upgrades, sometimes folks don't like to do that, right? I like the old version, I like the old way, and sometimes the upgrade then requires that we have to learn some new ways, right? And what I'm going to invite us into over this next hour is what's important for the next round. That is not to say, so I remember when I had my mobile phone bag. And I was so proud to have my bag in my car and I could use that phone because that didn't exist before. It was relevant at the time, all right? I want us to be really clear that we not poo-poo on the 80s and the 90s, that we not minimize the way we used to do it because it was the best we knew to move us forward in the time. Does that make sense? So the importance of building on that is what I'm inviting us into in our conversation today, right? So we know what it was then. Some of us may not remember. Some of us have entered the conversation in 2000. So we don't know what it was in the 90s. We don't know how far we've come. But it is important for us to honor that history as we move into the future of the work for the next round. And that's what I want to invite us into today. I start that honoring by honoring the land. So the next level, the next round is about recognizing that we are on stolen land. And so I honor Native American and First Nations and Indigenous folks as we occupy. So a land acknowledgement is how I start my work today. In the 80s, I wasn't starting it in that way. In the 90s, I wasn't starting it in that way because I wasn't conscious about the experience of Native American and Indigenous folks. And so I start by breathing in the opportunity that we get to share in this learning space on the land of peoples who's gone before us. As I do that, I also honor the legacy of our ancestors, some who were brought here voluntarily, some who came voluntarily, some who were not voluntarily, right? And those who built these campuses and institutions of higher learning but didn't have access to them, right? So I remember and I honor those legacies. I also, as I honor the work for the next round, is recognize that today is the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Harvey Milk. Just another moment in the fight for diversity and inclusion. And some 40 years later, right, we honor him and all those who have gone before him and came after him in the continuous fight for greater inclusion. So we breathe in, the work didn't start with us. And we recognize that as we move forward today. Shall we take a deep breath together? Let it out. So thank you. I have found it more and more important as I do the work these days to remember where in which we've come from. With that named, my intentions for our time together is for us to deepen our level of authentic engagement and conversation about and across difference. So as we come together in this space today, my hope is that, we don't have a lot of time, but as Dr. Sawyer named, the intention is for us to begin to engage at a different level. And when I say deeper level of authentic conversation, how many of us know we can be honest without being fully authentic? Like we can tell the truth, but not say everything. Like, I like that blouse. I wouldn't wear with that skirt. I didn't lie, but I didn't say everything. How many of you would agree that we can often have these conversations and they're the I like that blouse conversation, right? And so as we navigate this discussion for a deeper, building our capacity for greater inclusion requires that we have a deeper level of authentic conversation. And so I want to invite you to think about today, what are the conversations that you have in the meeting after the meeting? Right? How many folks have been to a meeting after the meeting? As I look around, some of you have called the meetings, I can tell, right? But what I'm talking about is the need for us as a community, particularly as we relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to reduce the need for a meeting after the meeting. Because we are building our capacity to have real conversations in the space, to raise what we need to raise, to ask what we need to ask, to name where we've been impacted. That's the work for the next round. Or else we maintain status quo, right? No real change happens if we can't be in real conversation. All right? So deepening the level of authentic engagement. The next thing then is to discuss the importance of creating a learning environment. So in this space, folks, I want us to be able to talk about how important it is for us to do our work individually and collectively to create a learning division of student affairs. That this is not a space where people have to know everything, but they can be learning things. How many folks have heard of being woke? Anybody heard of the notion of being woke? I just came from ASH, and it was the Association for the Study of Higher Education. And the theme for that conference was Envisioning a Woke Academy, right? And it was very powerful. But part of the notion there is, what does it mean for us to show up, not just already woke, but waking up, right? Dr. Lori Patton Davis, who is the president of ASH right now, did a powerful keynote, and she talked about the importance of the journey to wake up. What does waking up look like, right? And she named in her keynote, "Don't wake me, I'm dreaming," right? And this notion that for some of us, we want to just stay asleep because the dream is so good, right? But how do we wake up and engage what's real, right? The next thing is to offer some effective tools for engaging, so we build a more inclusive Sonoma State. So I want to, before we wrap up today, and we don't have a lot of time, but I want to name that I want to offer you, and I want you to see that there are some tools we need for the next round, all right? So yes, some of the stuff we got from the earlier rounds work, but here are some things that you're going to need for the next round. Does that make sense? So as we talk about technology today, you need to understand what a wall is, right? So if you're gonna post something, that's not where I'm talking about putting it, right? Right? Does that make sense? So it's some new things that we need to be able to understand, and some framings that we want to understand, and then to offer and to consider the tool of self-awareness as a key needed skill. So it's not about a checklist. It's not about the right word to or not to say. You may get some of that, but the biggest tool is you. And that tool around who you are, how you see the world, and how that matters in terms of creating greater inclusion is what I want to be able to leave with today. All right? Make sense? The way we're going to start that is I'm going to ask for some help passing out this handout. So there's a handout that's coming around. I'm going to invite everyone to grab one, and we're going to just have some engagement this morning, right? Grab a handout. I'm actually going to come on back here and just hand some of these out right here so we can just move them right along. Just pass them around here. Here you go. Thank you very much. Everybody just grab a sheet. All right. Thank you very much. So here's where we're going. For the next few minutes, we're going to have a little morning social, right? We're just going to kind of be with each other this morning. Thank you, Rachel and Sue, for helping me in that way. You're going to, in a few moments, those of us who are able to stand, we're going to get up, we're going to move from our seat, and we're going to go and meet somebody. Hello, what's your name? Mo, good to meet you, Mo. And so Mo and I are going to start. All of us are going to start with this first box up here. Now, what I want you to do is there anyone in the room that knows everybody? So that's a part, right? So that is a part of building our capacity for the next round. It starts with building community, right? So I want you to start with, who don't I know? Who have I seen and I've waved and I've smiled and I've been polite, but I've never actually spoke to them, right? So I'm going to invite us, folks, and I'm not talking about introverts and extroverts. I'm just talking about saying hi. Okay, so I'm not needing people to have the same kind of energy or be cheerleaders. I'm just saying hi. Hi, Mo. Good to meet you. So we're starting there. What's up? Whatever has your energy or attention. So we're coming off of, for those of us who do the Thanksgiving holiday, maybe we're coming off of our Thanksgiving holiday. Maybe we're coming off of other things from the weekend. Maybe some of us are big as we move into the rest of the winter holidays, whether it's Hanukkah or Christmas or Kwanzaa or whatever that happens for you in December or not. Some of us are big Black Friday shoppers, right? Cyber Monday shoppers. And so we're coming off of the great deals we got. Or I don't do that. I'm just coming off of the good turkey salad that I made after Thanksgiving, right? That I didn't get any of because it was eaten by my partner. Okay, all right. I digress. Anyway, what's up? Whatever has your energy or attention as we get started this morning. It might be your end of semester stuff around work. So what does November at the end of the semester look like for you in housing, in career development, in Upward Bound, in talent program? What does it look like? What are the things that might have your energy if you were not in this room? So I know that all of us were voluntold to be here, right? So it was kind of a command performance. So how many of us know we can be in the room and not in the room? So I'm inviting us to get in the room. Whatever has your energy and or attention. It might be personal, and it might be work. It might be navigating family. It might be whatever you feel like you want to go to. When I start this way, I always ask people to pay attention to what you've already decided you won't share. So you know it has your energy or attention, but you're not going to talk about it. There's no judgment around that, but it matters for the next round. Are you getting me? So what's up? What has our energy or attention as we get started? So we start there. Mo and I start with what's up. The second question then is, how are you feeling about being in this space with this group of people to have the I wouldn't wear it with that skirt conversation as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion? What feelings come up for you as you consider hearing and sharing the things that get said in the meetings after the meeting? Does that make sense? So that feeling could be, oh, I'm excited, I'm thrilled. Feel could be like, nervous, anxious, doubtful. Is it making sense? So get to the feeling. You don't have to get to what's under the feeling because we don't have time. Just get to what it is if you can. If you are in the space where your response to that question is, I don't really know, say that. It's critical as we build our capacity for the next round. Is that landing? Okay. That's the first box. Mo and I have had that box. We had that great conversation. Then I say, bye, Mo. Then I'm off to my new friend, Vanessa, right? And then Vanessa and I go anywhere in here that we want. Vanessa and I might go into what are the challenges and or concerns of the current local and national context that impact. I might decide that I want to share an insight or learning that I've had as it relates to diversity and inclusion and how it's impacted my work, right? So we don't have to go into the same box after the first box. Does that make sense to you? Right. So that's where we're going, right? The last piece I want to name, folks, is ideally you should be with one other person, right? But if you're looking around and it looks like everybody's partnered up and I don't have nobody to talk to, don't stand off in the corner for 3 minutes. Just join a group. The intention in this next piece is that we begin to use our voice in this discussion. In order to build capacity for the next round, you must use your voice. That's where we're going. We're going to be in here about 7 to 10 minutes. So the intention is not to finish all of these. The intention is to have 3 to 4 deeper levels of authentic conversation. Does that make sense? All right. So if you're with one person and you've been there for 7 minutes, you've been there too long. All right. So about 3 to 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes a person, and then move on to the next person. You want to get at least 2 to 3 of these conversations in. Got it? Take a deep breath. Go. All right. Stay where you are. Stay where you are. Let me grab your attention. Let me grab your attention. Excellent. How we doing? Good. It looks great. You look great out there. All right. So here's the next piece. So as we move to the next part, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that you have said hello to 4 or 5 folks that you don't know or haven't gotten to see since the break or whatever. So, or not seen much. So say hi to people. Just greet. Have them good morning, greet. And then what I want you to do is I want you to partner up with someone you didn't know at all or didn't know as well when you came in the room. So repeat after me. I need a partner. Someone I didn't know at all or didn't know as well when I came in the room. And I'm going to sit with them after I say hi to 4 or 5 people. You got 1 minute. Go. But use the full room. Find a partner. Have a seat. Everybody needs a partner. Somebody I didn't know at all or didn't know as well. Didn't know at all or didn't know as well. Perfect. Didn't know it all or didn't know as well. Excellent. Didn't know it all or didn't know as well. All right. Seats over there. Excellent. Perfect. All right. Wonderful, wonderful. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so very much for engaging in that way. Would you give your partner a high five? High five your partner. Okay. All right. So, folks, if you did like this and you slapped a hand, you got a partner. If you did like this, you slapped air, you ain't got no partner. If you did like this and you slapped more than one hand, you got too many partners. Now, that's not my business, but for the purpose of this session, I'm going to ask that you just have one, okay? So, who needs a partner? Where's my triad? Do I got any triads going on out there? Okay? Okay? All right? So who's, okay? Y'all coming together? Okay? All right? Somebody else needing a partner? Someone else? Okay, right there. Perfect. Excellent, folks. So now give your partners a high five again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, folks, what you have with you is you're building inclusive communities. High five, buddy. Right? Give him another high five. Right? So, I started this way very intentionally, and I want you to recognize that the importance of starting with building community. Building community and building relationships across departments, across division, across functions, across levels, and across identities. That's where the work begins. Real relationship building happens with deliberate and intentional action. Now, how many of you, when you came in the room, you were sitting next to folks you knew? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Look around. That's what we do. That's our natural or our learned behavior pattern. We go right to where we're comfortable. What we are inviting our students to do all the time is to move beyond their comfort zone so that we expand their comfort zone. They get more comfortable across identity, comfortable across majors, comfortable across geographic areas. Is that making sense? But we must model that behavior, and we have to practice that. It will not happen accidentally. you must get conscious and deliberate about it. So I want you to pay attention to, as you move in and through spaces, how much you, I'm not saying don't connect with the people you know. Please stay connected, right? It's important. It's like, gosh, we're so busy. We're often silent. We're busy on our campuses, so we don't get to see each other enough. So it's like, oh gosh, I haven't seen you in a while and I just want to connect. Yes, still do that, but make sure, particularly as you're moving into space, you pay attention to how you're connecting with folks you don't know and folks that don't know you. With that, this building inclusive community, high five buddy, it's your BIC, building inclusive community, high five buddy. This is your BIC, high five your BIC. Okay, is the person that you are going to get to in this next 45 minutes, have a deeper level of authentic conversation with. So one of the things that happens in these kinds of sessions is that folks come into the session and they're gonna learn, but they do learning this way. And I'm not saying they're not taking information, but they're often doing it in listening mode only. For the next round, you will need to develop your voice in the conversation. Every single voice matters. Perspective, experience, understanding, knowing, language, it all matters. So you must begin to practice using your voice in this discussion. For some of us, we're in it all the time, right? And so I don't need no practice in developing my voice. I got my voice in this. Sometimes people want me to shut up because I got too much voice. Got it. The work then for you is to learn how to use your voice in community with others so that they can have voice and that yours can be heard in community with them, not over them. All right? So all of us have the next level of learning to do for the next round, right? With that named. For the next 3 to 5 minutes, I'm gonna invite you to make sure you kind of know the role that your high five buddy is playing, how long they've been here. So you're gonna do name, role, pronoun that you use and or respond to. And then what I want all of us to respond to is this box. What have you seen, heard, or experienced that necessitates this conversation? What do you see in your work every day with each other and with the populations we serve that would say, this is very good, this is necessary, we need to be in this room having this discussion today, all right? A fine answer to that question is, I don't know. I like all my students like me, I treat everybody fairly, I don't know why we was made to come to this. That is a fine answer. If that's your truth, you must speak it. Or at least get in touch with the fact that you're lying. So if that's your truth and you're not saying it, get in touch with why you're not saying it, right? Because it is okay for that to be your truth. We can't move if you won't tell your truth. Got me? About 3 to 5 minutes, introductions, and everybody responding to that question. Go. Thank you very much. High five your partners. High fives. High fives are in the room. All right, thank you very much. So how many of you could have kept talking? How many of you could have kept talking? Excellent, yes. That was evident as I was looking around. If my voice was not an interruption, so when you heard me begin to count, if your energy wasn't, one finish, I got more to say, then you were probably doing good workshop participant. Because if you were doing this, it ain't been 3 minutes yet, then you were performing, not engaging. If my voice was an interruption, you were really doing the work. Because really, there's no way you can have that conversation in 3 minutes. Right? Does that make sense? So I want you to pay attention to, how do I show up in these conversations? Do I show up in performance? Or do I show up in real engagement so that we can do the real work? Does that make sense to you? Now hear me, folks. There is no judgment in that. But you can't know how to move to the next level if you're not doing honest engagement about where you are. Okay? And so maybe I find it difficult to talk about this stuff. Maybe I don't feel like I know enough to talk about this stuff. Whatever it is, I get uncomfortable talking with these people about this stuff. Whatever it is, there's no judgment. But you must get to that so that we can go to a deeper level of real engagement and get to the places we need to go. Does that land? I didn't experience that with anyone, right? From what I saw you were all deeply in it, right? But I want you to get a hold of, was I in it in this one? Am I performing it in my office, right? Was I in it in this one, but I perform it when we talk about this content, right? So when do I not find myself really fully engaged, right? Doing the work, right? With that, high five your partner again. So, folks, what I want to name is everything I'm doing. I know what we just had about 90 minutes or so, but everything I'm doing is on purpose. Nothing I'm doing is about filling time, okay? I'm a black preacher. I can fill 90 minutes like that. That is not an issue for me, okay? I am intentionally offering you an opportunity to practice, right? Being in this work, right? So developing your voice, building community, all of those things are important, as well as the high five buddy, right? That is your energy partner. How many know that these conversations can sometimes be draining, right? Just the situations that we're navigating right now can be draining, and we need things to keep our energy up in this time. And so whenever you see your high five buddy, anywhere on campus, at any time, in the grocery store, anywhere, you're giving them a high five because it's a reminder of the energy that's in this room, that it has us in full energy and engagement. Does that land for you? All right. So I wanted us to get started in that way because for the next half hour or so, I'm going to need to be putting some information in the room. But I want you to make sure that you know your voice matters, your connection matters, right? And I want you to continue to engage around the things that I will get to share from this point on. Before I move, though, I want to hear from two voices. What do you see? What have you seen, heard, or experienced that necessitates this conversation? What have you seen or experienced, whether you've been here for 20 years or whether this is your second week? What have you seen, heard, or experienced that necessitates our being in this room, in this discussion today? Who's willing to put it in the room? Right here in the back. Well, I see two people. So I'm just going to go right to these two folks. Do you mind? Thank you. So share your name, your role, how long you've been here.
My name is Christy Jambastiani from Disability Services. I've been here since 2007. So one of the things that I brought up in relation to that question is that with slant of disability services where I work, we often try, when we do outreach, to talk about how while we try and support inclusion and diversity, that disability is part of that. And it's often something that is sort of not really mentioned a lot of the time when we're focusing on other things that people think about more when they think about inclusivity and diversity. And that disability, you can have all of those other things going on, and then disability can also be part of that. And disability can happen at any time for anyone in their life. And statistically speaking, it really is more likely, yeah. So it's just important to think about that. And it is contributing to a world of diversity, having disability as part of the picture as well.
Absolutely. What's your name?
Christy?
Christy, thank you. How many folks relate to what Christy is naming, right? So this notion of, as we talk about diversity and inclusion, how are we engaging and inviting the discussion around ability, right, and disability into that discussion? Yes, please, I'll take this one.
Andre Bailey, academic advisor, educational opportunity program. And on the basis of what I've seen, heard about, or experienced in the past 2 decades is a high level of exiting, or should I say the lack of retention for underrepresented populations, students that are coming from, should I say, first generation college students. And it's just been rather disappointing over years. What's exciting about being here today is that the collective nature of a new direction and people doing the work. So again, it was inspiring to hear my partner was from Western Kentucky and just came back from a 100-year family reunion in Kentucky, and there was a lot of, I got the right partner. So, so
Thank you, Andre. All right, how many relate that you've seen retention issues for first generation, minoritized students? Yes, okay. So part of the reason I'm inviting that question, folks, is that I know, as I said earlier, most of us were encouraged to come, voluntold to be in the space, right? And when you leave the space and people ask you about your day and what'd you do today, and you say, oh, we had this session this morning, and they say, oh, why'd you all have to do that? I need you to have an answer that's more than we were told to go. If you are not clear why we need to be in the room, it's not wrong, but that's your work for the space, right? So it's okay if you don't know, but it's like, how many of you have ever had to take a class and didn't know why you had to take it? Anybody? Right? Anybody had them general ed requirements? I don't want to be. What's your energy when you're in a space when you don't know why you have to be there? Right? So think about that class at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning that's not a part of your major. What's your energy when you're in that space? Right? It's low. Today, you might not even be there. You just have somebody record it, take the notes, or whatever. Am I making sense? Right? I use that as an example because often folks show up at this session not knowing why they have to be here. And when you don't know why you have to be in the space, your energy is different. It is important that we are able, each and every one of us, to tie this conversation to what we are charged with as educators in our various roles in higher education. What do we see, whether it is about retention, whether it is about who we are considering when we talk about diversity and inclusion, what am I thinking about, what am I not thinking about? All of those things and more is important. So I want you to pay attention to what you shared with your partner, what your partner shared with you, what was shared in the room, that we get clear as a division why this matters, okay? With that named, this sheet was not about an icebreaker. Often people think that I'm just doing icebreakers. I get paid too much to do icebreakers. It's not an icebreaker. It is inviting you into the conversation. And it is beginning to give you practice around the things that matter for today. First, you've got to get present with what's up, what's in your head space and in your heart space. The reason I asked you not only what's going on, but also what you're feeling is because for the next round, you will need to be as emotionally intelligent as you are cognitively intelligent. What happens for us in higher education is that there's a lot of cognitive knowing. People know the right words to say, they've read the right articles, they might have even gotten awards for articles, but they don't know how they feel at the engagement level. So I can know a whole lot about issues of disability and be very uncomfortable when I'm in front of someone who is visibly disabled. I can have all the information about autism or learning disabilities and feel very not prepared to engage a staff member who's autistic, or very unprepared to engage a staff member or colleague who lives with depression. Does that make sense? So you must not only have cognitive knowing, you must also have emotional knowing, and allow yourself to get clear about what do I feel. And I can know one thing in an area and feel something different in another. So I might feel really comfortable engaging race, but not comfortable engaging religion. So that's your work. Does that make sense to you, right? So to pay attention to where you are effectively. The rest of these here, again, and if we had more time, we would work all of these, but I want you to pay attention to the current state, what's going on locally and nationally that's informing. What's been your experience in your department? So if you were just we're in the full division, but if you were just in your department, how are these conversations happening in your department? What's the stuff we talk about? What's the stuff that we don't talk about? Who's included? Who's not included? Who raises the issues? Who doesn't raise the issues? Do we just have this conversation in time of crisis? What happens? right? And that gives us information about where we need to do work. What are we seeing within our particular functional areas, but on the campus in general, to pay attention to what have I learned? So my hope is that we are paying attention in this space to what we're learning. I started this session with an honoring of the land. I started in a land acknowledgement. I started with an honoring of the legacy. That is how my learning over this last 6 years has informed my practice. There's been a lot of things, but I started with saying, please stand if you're able. I didn't always recognize if you're able needed to be a part of my language to be more inclusive in terms of the space. Even if I did not see a person in the room who looked like they were mobility impaired, right? But to still invite that knowing. Does that make sense to you, right? So that's how it has informed my practice, and it impacts my work. I need us talking about what have you learned over the last 4, 5, 10 years around diversity and inclusion, so that you're talking about how that has shifted your practice. How has my practice become more inclusive because of what I've learned and what I begin to understand? Landing, making sense to you, right? So all of this, how do you see inclusion impacting your work or your discipline of preparing the next generation? I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but I want you to think about whatever your area or your field is, or your area of study, whether that's career development, whether that's Upward Bound, whether that is residential life, what all of the different areas that we work in assessment, in student life. How have we seen diversity and inclusion impacting that? And how we've had to shift and continue to expand and to do our learning. What does that look like? What has been our experience with conversations about race here, and how does race show up in this discussion, and then our hopes for this work? So again, I appreciate, as Andre named in the back, excited about after, kind of this round of being here, being in this work for over 20 years in EOP and watching things and being on the ground with some of our most at promise young people, right? What it means to watch them come and go through, and some of them not return, and so on and so forth. And so what I need for us for the next round to move forward is this as a division. So I want you to pay attention to those things. So as you go back, take the sheet, because the sheet is about the work. It's not just an activity to get us up and moving. It is about recognizing these are the critical pieces of moving the work forward. The next thing I want to offer is the importance of creating a learning environment. What do you think, what would you say gets in the way of people being in this work? Being in these conversations for real, navigating this stuff? What are some of the things that get in the way, people struggle with? Huh? Testing. Oh, okay, so wanting to be able to have a quantitative number that's going to measure it, right? Okay, yep. Anybody else? Yes. Who relates, right? Yep, right. So emotionally exhausting, right? Yes, please, right here. Right? Fear of not having the right language, right? So again, that's what I appreciate. I want us all using our voice, practicing. So what gets in? So then I would say, so what gets in my way, right? What keeps me cautious or holding back, or not feeling like I can be in it all the time? And there's no wrong in that, but get to that so we can begin to move through that. Here's what I want to offer you. As we talk about creating learning community environments, many of us have seen lists like this before. If you've ever been to a leadership or a diversity and inclusion workshop, you should have seen something like this, right? Something that invites us to have open and honest communications, all perspectives being valid and welcome. Creating space for people to speak and use I statements, but also allowing space, this is the upgrade for me, allowing space for the we. Because as I entered the work earlier in the first round, I used to focus on speak in I terms, but did not allow space for folks to speak as a collective and to have the collective experience in the room, right? And so to create that space, to listen respectfully, listening to seeking to understand, to be open to perspectives that are different than mine, new perspectives. Share this one with me, say this one with me. Take risk, prepare to engage conflict and discomfort. Tell your partner. Okay? say it again.
People are always like, I want it to be easy, but it's not going to be easy.
Right. So as we're talking about the upgrade for the next round, if you are not willing to engage conflict and discomfort, we are not going to move. Now, I am not saying that the work has to be traumatizing. I'm not saying that it always needs to be hard. But I am saying we've got to be okay with everything not being California nice. Does that make sense? Right? So, move up, move back. So again, paying attention, folks, to is my voice always in? Am I always taking up? Do I always have an opportunity? Do I need to move back to create space for other voices? Is my perspective. Is my voice or perspective never in? And might I need to move up to get my voice and perspective in, right? Very critical to pay attention to that reality. Recognizing and exploring our triggers. Who's ever been triggered? Anybody ever been triggered? Right? So when we're triggered, what generally happens? It creates a what? Deep emotional experience, right? So it's often what shows up is a fight or flight response. So I'm either about to take you out or I'm going out. In neither one of those spaces are we effective engaging. Does that make sense? Right? So I must pay attention to, in this work, when am I triggered? What gets said, what gets done or not done yet again that takes me there, that has me go into the room and go, that's how they are. I'm shut down. Or that has me go into the room and go at your throat. Are you getting me? So it can be something said, something done, something not said, something not done. Pay attention to where your triggers are. Because triggers are actually a gift. Triggers give you information about work you still need to do. Because what's happened out there is actually just the stimulus. Your response is internal. So why is it that I get so upset when these folks do or these folks don't do that, such that I'm shut down or I can't engage, or I'm about shut down and can't engage, or I'm about to take somebody out? Okay, does that make sense to you? That's very important self-work for the next round. When I realized how much I was allowing myself to blame my trigger on other people and other things and not doing the work that I needed to do to heal so that I could still show up. In that thing still happened and it was still problematic, but I have to be effective at engaging that if I'm going to move it forward. Does that make sense? Right? So, triggers. Trust intent, name, explore, and engage impact. Trusting intent, trusting that my friend Rob didn't get up this morning to piss me off. He didn't. I trust his intention was not, he's a good person. Rob is a good person. I don't suspect that Rob was coming to try to hurt. Now, how many of us know well-intentioned people do harm every day? Exactly. And part of what maintains status quo is that we stop at trusting intent. But we don't name and explore and engage impact. So that's an important piece of the work. Does that make sense to you? So while I trust that Rob did not intend to do any harm in that moment, if I don't name the impact, what I do is I set Rob up to do it again. Oh, that was just Rob. Rob's a good guy. Rob didn't mean to do that. Right. They didn't know. I trust intent. When I stop there and not name the impact, then I set Rob up. It's actually dishonoring not to name impact. Make sense to you? All right? The last things then are trust that the dialogues will take us to deeper levels of understanding and acceptance. It is critical that we know that if we do this work for real, if we actually show up, and I appreciate Andre naming, give me your name again. Ben, naming that I'm in the right partnership. We got someplace in just that little bit of time, you know. It was powerful to be that. That if we trust that those conversations will build something, will take us somewhere, if we believe that, we will go there. If we don't, we won't. We'll perform, right? So again, as a division, as leaders, I often, my theme for my conference this year as the president of ACBA is Student Affairs, we are the leaders that our institutions are waiting for. We are the ones who's needed at this time to help move our institutions forward. And time out for playing small. I know the president's in the room. I'm very much aware of that, right? And I believe that the president recognizes the leadership that's in this room. And our work is to show up as leaders. So if we trust that the dialogue will take us to deeper levels of understanding and acceptance, we must show up as leaders in that conversation. The last thing is to have some fun. Can y'all tell I'm having fun? So for me, building capacity to include greater, to be more inclusive on our campuses is not about doom and gloom. But if every time we come to this discussion, it's this, that it is always about the problem of diversity, the challenge of diversity, and not the opportunity of diversity, then nobody wants to be in that. And so I'm inviting us to look at what's the fun in this? Where are my fun people? Any fun people in the room? Look around at the fun people. High five some fun people. Fun people. I need some fun people in this conversation. My point is, folks, I'm not talking about doing food festivals, heroes, and holidays. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about focusing on. I know that there are challenges as we continue to move the planet forward to greater inclusion. I'm not trying to minimize that at all. But if the only time we're in this conversation is in the space of crisis, then I think we are missing something huge. And that's the opportunity to celebrate and honor all of our legacies as well as all of the communities that we bring into this room. So some fun. Here's what I want you to do before I move to the next pieces. I want you just to turn back to your partner and look on that list and see what it is that you know you do well every day. So you know that, every day when I come to work, what people tell me is they appreciate how open and honest I am. That I am fine to deal with conflict and discomfort. I'm like, bring it, right? And so I'm not trying to stir it up, but I'm okay to be in it, right? I trust intent, but I will share impact, right? Is that making sense? So just one or two that you know you do well. Don't focus on what you need to work on. Just focus on what you do well. You've got 90 seconds. That's all. Share with your partner. Go. High fives again. High fives in the room. Excellent. Okay. So how many of us could identify something we do well? Who could identify something you do well? All right. Look around. All right. Most of us can. So here's what I want you to do. For the remainder of the year, simply do that. As it relates particularly to this conversation, simply practice doing that and watch what happens. Okay? Here's what I've experienced. People would have me to their campus. We would do work. We would create a list that looked something like this. We'd agree to operate by that list during our time together. We would go to deeper levels of learning. We would have powerful moments. We would leave the room and leave the list in the room. And then wonder why nothing has changed. So when I come back, they say, well, Jaime, when you were here, we had a good experience, but nothing happened after you left. And so then I say, well, what'd you do? And they say, well, they were supposed to. That was you and you and, you were always supposed to do something, right? I say, no, what did you do? And I want you to know, folks, that there's no way that Sonoma State can be in the same place this time next year if you are practicing this. No way. How many have been in a room? Somebody has said something, and everybody went like this. Anybody gonna say something? Who's been there, right? Now, if your strength is open and honest communication or taking risk, what happens in that moment is this. Something just happened. And it actually happened after you said that. And so while I know we've got about 7 more minutes in the meeting and we don't have time to really engage that, we cannot pretend like that didn't happen. And in order for us to move forward, we have to come back to it. Does that shift the dynamic? What you then have to be is what? Prepare to engage conflict and discomfort. So I don't want you to get in mind, don't go out here saying, Jaime said all we have to do is this and we're going to get it together. That is a part of it, but you must be prepared to engage conflict and discomfort. Because then as we begin to show up, moving back, trusting intent, naming impact, being open and honest, as we begin to practice those things, then sometimes it's not going to feel comfortable, but it will help us to move forward. Does that make sense? So high five your partner. And when you see them, you're going to say, work your strength. Don't forget, keep working your strength. Yes, so hold on one second. Good, go ahead. Sure. Yes. That's so good. That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I'm seeing some snaps, right? Thank you for that, right? And so how do we navigate the dynamics of power that are in the room? And whether that power is about level and role or identities, right, that show up in the space, right? And so the work around this is that we begin creating communities where we value all voices and perspectives before there's an issue, right? So, and that's what I always say. So I often will say, so after you've left a space like this, it's fine to go back and say, so we had this great workshop or had this great opportunity today, and we began to talk about how we want to be in community together. So let's talk about that and what that might look like, right? And that let's acknowledge the dynamics and the issues of power, right? So I am the faculty member. I am the staff member. And so I might do something or say something that has a negative impact. I want to know that. So we've created the space where I have modeled as the person with the most power in this space how important that is. I own my identity as A and how that might show up in this space, creating a space that's not welcoming or inclusive or having a negative impact in a way that I didn't intend. I trust that as I move into spaces, that my heart is in the right place. That I care about all students here, but I also know I was raised on a planet. And chances are, I might have got some stuff that had me not see some things. And so I don't want my role and my position to get in the way of me getting better, right? And so I'm modeling that, right? Again, and I appreciate the question so much because it's not about that's the only way to do it, but my intention in that is show up authentically and in truth. Name the dynamics of power that show up, that create some tensions around being in this sometime. Name the roles, the identities, and so on and so forth. And know that it still will happen. Folks will still, after a space, have not felt safe enough to name something. And then we get to work from that place, right? And to acknowledge that and to say, so what would you need? How might I be supportive? How might we shift that? So that, Because my experience is that most people, not all people, but most people don't want to be in the space where they're not given honest feedback, right? They might not hear it well, all of that stuff, but that's a part of the skill development for the next round, right? Learning how to receive feedback across difference, learning how to give feedback across difference, across power levels and dynamics, right? And so while we can have the most senior person in the room, right, as president, she has position, power, and authority, and she is still the first Japanese woman president in the country. We don't pretend like that doesn't matter. Gender, race, all of that's in there, right? And so that we acknowledge that while I show up with position, power, and authority, and brilliance, and all the other cute stuff and powerful stuff that she shows up in, while I show up with that, I'm still navigating the intersection of identities and how people hear, how people respect, how people engage. All of that stuff is still in the room, right? And so the navigating of that, right? And for all of us as well, okay? And at the intersections of that. So folks, I want to invite, as we begin to wind down, practice this so that you can then begin to show up, building a community that is ready to engage. Now, as my closing comment, I want to invite you into this. When most folks hear the words diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion, what do they think we're going to talk about? Race. And when we're talking about race, who are we talking about? Black and white people. If you're not black or white, good luck. Maybe we'll find some time in discussion, maybe we won't. Now, how many of us know diversity is about more than race, and race is about more than black and white? Okay? We all know that. So why is it that that's where people's minds go? Why do you think? Because history and experiences, and what I want to offer is our context, right? How many of you would agree that we have a particular raced history in the context of the US, right? And the way that raced history has gotten shared has had us not see Native American and First Nations, has had us not know and understand the experiences of API and APITA and DESI folks, has had us pit black and brown folks against one another, has had us live in a narrative of anti-blackness, and has had whiteness not be a real race. So, in order for us to do this work well, you must be willing to do race. If we are to move Sonoma forward, we must be willing to engage race. Now, repeat after me. Jaime did not say race was more important than other identities. Say it again. Jaime did not say race was more important than other identities. Don't lie on me. I'm glad it's being recorded. I did not say that race was more important. What I did say is, given our context, we must be willing to engage race and engage our raced narratives. So who do we see? Who don't we see? Who gets heard? Who doesn't get heard in that piece? And we must actively practice engaging that. I tell folks, I've been black all my life, far as I know. But just because I've been black didn't mean I knew what it meant to be black. So I had not necessarily done race. I was just being raced. You get that? So we all get to do race, explore it, examine it. How does it show up in my life? How does it show up in my relationships? How does it show up in my engagements? How does it show up in my criterion, in my critique, in my understanding of who I draw near, who I back away from? We all get to do that so that we can be more effective engaging across and within race. And just like we must do race, we must do gender and class and ability and sexualities and gender identity and sexual orientation and nationality and religion or spiritual practice and other ways of knowing. Because what I'm saying the work is for the next round is to allow social identities to matter. The 80s work was where only one race, the human race. The 80s work was I don't see color. The 80s work was colorblind narrative. The 80s work, the 90s work was We Are the World. That was not bad. That was where we were at the time. We were trying to address the best we could. And what we know is that got us to some places. It got us to some rooms. The work for the next round is now to figure out how we navigate being in full community with all of us really fully being there. And that's our work as a community moving forward. I want to invite you to pay attention to what are the opportunities that I'm taking to do race, right? And so with your partners and within your communities, within your offices, if you were to go back and say, so how are we doing race here? How are we navigating our programs and our practices and our policies with a race lens? How are we doing that same thing with an ability lens, with a gender identity lens? That's the work. And we get to do it for the next round. When I was an undergraduate at Slippery Rock State College back in I was going to end racism before I left. I was going to get that done. I left Slippery Rock, and I went to Indiana University, and I discovered sexism. Who knew? I was going to end sexism before I left. Still working on that one, too. What I'm saying is, folks, ours may not be to fix it. Ours may be simply to leave it better than we found it. And so I have no illusions that we'll get it all done. But our work is to look at how are we leaving Sonoma more inclusive, more honoring than when we found it. And are we ready to get in the work for the next round? I believe you can. I hope you will. Thanks so much for your time.
But we do have a series of times that Dr. Washington is going to be around and for the next 2 days. So hope that you will look at the schedule, and we do have openings. He will be also presenting tomorrow at the same time from 10 to 11:30. But I'd like to maybe take one question if we can, and then that way we can end it up. Do we have a question for Dr. Washington? Okay, very good. You were excellent at it. So let me say one thing is, Cookie, yes. Yes, please, do your plug.
Hi, my name is Cookie Garrett, pronouns she, her. Our Black Student Union and Black Faculty and Staff Association is hosting our first joint program tomorrow. It's titled Froology, and it is the state of natural hair care, ethnic hair care, and skincare. So we are inviting everybody out to come share with us, support us. Please tell your students you come also and support your students in that space. We would love to see everyone there. It's tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the Cooperage.
And that also includes those of us who used to be in froology. Because I can still bring my pictures in when I had a big fro. So first of all, I want to thank Dr. Washington for being here today, and I know that he has had an impact on all of us, giving us another style and way of thinking, of doing the work that we do with students on a daily basis as we interact with each other as staff and faculty, but also too, giving us a way that we can honor ourselves in the work that we do. There's something I do every day that I'm very proud of. And to know that we go in tomorrow with that same attitude, to be able to have this, that we will make sure that folks get a copy of it so that you can look at that every day and understand that I've got to continue to do the good work for our students because we're sending them out as trustees of our community. And they're going to go out and be the disciples of the good work. And so, again, Jaime, thank you so much for being here, for helping us to share in that space, for helping us to honor those indigenous people that are here, whose land that we honor. And also, too, I thank our president for being here because, as you all know, and it's not to embarrass Dr. Sakaki, she came here and she changed the narrative. She came here and said, we're going to be unapologetic about equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And she came here and said, we're all the same, but we need to be doing the same kind of work to honor those students around us. So, Dr. Sakaki, thank you for giving us a space to be able to do the good work we need to do for our students. So thank you. And for all of you, if you get a chance to, of course, today is a different day. Tomorrow, you don't have to go to anything. We'd love for you to show up if you want to tomorrow. I am sure that I've been with Dr. Washington for many years, and to every time that I'm with him, I get a different high-five partner, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I do. I get a different high-five partner. So every time I see people at conference, I'm going, oh! So it's really amazing when you do that after you've been doing it for a while, because you see high-five people everywhere. And you really do see them in the supermarket. So you just high-five them at the gas station everywhere. So thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful day. Dr. Washington, thank you. Sue, Rachel, thank you for making this. And one other person I want to talk about, she's not here, but Tammy, who is over in HR. Tammy wanted to do something that I think is something we need to do at our university, which is continue to have collaborative partnerships with each other. We don't have enough funds to go around. We don't have enough time. We don't have the physical capacity. But imagine if we find another partner on campus that we can work with to do the good work. So that way we take our funds, we pull them together. So this time was HR and student affairs. The next time it will be someone else. Think about that as you're putting together your programs and activities for the future. Thank you.